First of all, warm welcome to this webinar on Indian listings, and delighted to be with all of you. It is a Friday. It is 4:30 p.m. And it is also 26th November. And I think 26th November has, of course, various memories for all of us. So I think prayers to the people who kind of navigated that terrible day in Bombay. And of course, on a different note, it is also happens to be the birthday of what everybody knows, the milkman of India, Mr. Kurian's birthday. And I remember I was reading the quote in the newspapers today of Mr. Kurian, and which in some capacity I thought links to the topic as well, which is really about making profits. And he said that when one works for the farmers and for the workers, there is sharing involved. But at the end of the day, when you think about the community and the society at large, and when you do things with that mindset, good things comes and profits do also come as a consequence. And I thought, I reflected on that quote, and I thought it was relevant in some context as we discuss around listings. I think first of all, it's a topic which I'm sure it's in everybody's mind. Very quickly, my name is Raja Lahiri. I'm a partner with Grant Thornton. I focus on IPO and transaction side of things. I also look at the tech, media, telecom sector. Very clearly, this webinar series is our fourth conversation. We've had series of conversations on overseas listing, which started last year. And this is basically a continuation of that series around listings, which I guess is pretty important on everybody's mind. And with further ado, I would just take you through a brief, small deck in terms of where the IPO market stands in India. So maybe if I may request, Meghna, if you could have the slides on, I'll just quickly take through the deck. Yeah, the next slide, please. Right. So very clearly, one takes a step back and reflects around the last year. Obviously, we are still in the pandemic, but a lot has happened from last year. 2020 was, in my view, quite phenomenal announcement by the Indian government, which talked about the direct overseas listing, the opportunity that the government thought would enable for Indian private companies to go overseas. And if there was a lot of hope that the direct overseas listing regulations would come, for whatever reason, it is still under the works. But 2020 was also called the year of SPACs, significant capital raise in the US capital markets. 60% of that came from SPACs, the special purpose acquisition company vehicle, where a lot of Indian companies started having significant interest. In Feb 21, India's largest renewable power company, ReNew Power, announced its merger with a SPAC, becomes one of the India's top company to get SPAC listed in 2021. Followed in March 21, the GIFT City also kind of comes out with a consultation paper on SPAC listing for Indian companies in India at the GIFT City. Fast forward that, when a lot of the unicorns, a lot of the Indian companies were looking at overseas listings and the SPAC opportunity. And suddenly there was a change of wind or direction where Zomato got listed in India in July 2021, which became one of the topmost IPOs, and especially the new age e-commerce sector. So completely changed the momentum of the market. We also saw in September, Freshworks, one of India's leading SaaS company, getting listed at NASDAQ, clearly choosing the overseas market. Fast forward again in September 2021, the unicorn story of India continues to be very strong. 70 plus unicorns India adds 13 unicorns in July to September quarter, second after the US. The unicorn story continues to build up. November, fast forwarding, which is the current month, we have seen close to $5 billion. Yes, $5 billion of IPOs that have got announced. Of course, to top it all, Paytm with the biggest IPO offering that came to the market. So very clearly, if one reflects on this, the listing landscape is changing for India. If you go to the next slide, please. As I talked about the numbers, the amount of IPOs at $15 billion is higher than the last 3 years. So very clearly, there is a flurry of IPOs that are already in the market and a flurry of IPOs in the Indian market that are expected to come. What are the 2-3 key drivers happening? Clearly, the unicorn story, right? 70 unicorns, private equity funded, well capitalized. A lot of them have announced India listings. Some of them have announced their option to also go overseas, but very clearly listing remains to be a key focus of their journey. The second, I would say, is clearly the digital disruption and the business transformation that is going on. Fintech, e-commerce, edutech, SaaS companies are galore. So very clearly, it's an explosion happening in the digital world, especially from India. And as per the Goldman's report, very clearly the share of the new age companies in the market index in the next decade is going to be at least 50%, or if not more, compared to hardly 12% today. So very clearly the shift happening in the new age sectors. Overall, very clearly, the market cap of Indian companies at $3 trillion is expected to go up to $5 trillion and expected India to become the 5th largest capital market globally. Currently, it is the 7th largest. Go to the next slide. Some of the top IPOs everybody's aware of, whether it is the Paytm or the Zomatos, but very interestingly also sectors like the automotive sector, like the real estate sector, and also the financial services, the core financial services sector also saw some interesting and large IPOs offering that happened in 2021. Moving ahead. I guess the question that at least I would have is first, why list, right? Of course, depending on the various stages of a company, right? Every company is unique in my view. Some are private equity funded, some are owner managed, some are professionally managed, some are carve-outs, but fundamentally the growth story of India remains pretty strong. But why list? Very clearly, listing offers the currency, right? A currency of the company, of its shares, which offers liquidity, fundraising ability, but more importantly, really the visibility of the company, right? And finally, the trust of the shareholders. You're not dealing with a certain personal pool of shareholders, but a wider variety of stakeholders, which means quite a significant responsibility and change. Listing, of course, has the advantages of takeovers where you can do M&A using your shares as your currency. Moving ahead. I guess the questions to ask, and we've of course got an August panel, but some of the questions that we would like to get views of the panel are really around, first of all, is why list? Is it fine to remain private? For example, do we really need to list? Second, are we ready, right? Listing is not just a great milestone. It's an important milestone, but it's not a destination itself. Because in my view, the real story really starts after listing. So are we ready? Business, organization, finance, process, legal, are we really ready as an organization to list? Listing has cost, not just the cost of listing, but also liabilities. It comes along with that. Most important question, I guess everybody has, valuation and pricing of issues. What kind of valuation is important, not just for the current set of shareholders, but for the future set of shareholders that are coming in to join the company. Right set of advisors. It's a pretty intense process. So do we have the right accountants, lawyers, bankers, and several people who get engaged? Aspects around accounting, financial reporting, restatements, right? The results of the company, the legal, secretarial, capital structure, and finally, about the project management office. It's a pretty important aspect to prepare for listing. Post-listing, things to think about are regulations. Regulations globally, directionally are getting stricter, right? So the impact of reputation risk and litigation remains very high. Stock performance needs to be sustainable. So some of the risk is something that we would debate, and we would clearly get views from our panelists. Moving forward, if you look at from an IPO journey perspective, I would say really in three buckets. First is the evaluation. I talked about it. Why list? But if the listing question is clear, then what is really our equity story? And in my view, it ultimately boils down to the business growth, the fundamentals, sustainability, and the story. I guess questions are also in the market. Is it India, overseas, timing, valuations, and finally what I call the IPO readiness. After you evaluate it, the question comes on the preparation, which is really about getting it executed, which I talked about it. We will hear from our panelists in terms of what were the real war room stories of preparation. And finally, post-listing, right? Post-listing is a different world. Public shareholders, your compliance, your reporting, your guidance, your communication, right? The strategy of communication, your board, the responsibility completely changes. The next slide and the final slide. As Grant Thornton, as a practice, very quickly, I just want to highlight to you that we've been advising various companies for the last 15 odd years on listings, both overseas and in India. And as far as we are concerned, we can really help companies in all these three stages, whether it is on the pre-IPO, whether it is on the IPO readiness assessment, assessing the organization from a financial, tax, IT, business, regulatory and secretarial perspective, to the preparation part, setting up a project management office, really setting up what I call the war room and making sure all the various work streams are well aligned. And finally, to post-IPO, which is really around the support in giving management to comply and really make them what I call listing, not compliant, but listing exceeding the expectations of the public at large. So without much ado, that's really what I had. I just want to quickly go to the panel and the panelists. I would like to first thank every panelist who have kind of given the time. First of all, warm welcome to Vivek Vikram Singh. Vivek is the MD and the Group CEO of Sona Comstar, very leading auto company. Great to see you, Vivek, and thanks for joining in. Very successfully listed. Second is going forward is Manish Agarwal is the CEO of India's leading mobile gaming company, Nazara, which again has successfully got listed. Then Yash Asher, one of the top lawyers in the capital market space, heads capital markets at Cyril Amarchand. I've been involved in, again, on the top listings in India. Thank you very much, Yash, for joining in.
Thank you.
Then Ramki, private equity advisor and leader, spent in private equity for the last 25 years, and former CEO of Kotak Private Equity. Thank you, Ramki, for joining in today. And finally, my colleague, Siddharth Nigam. Siddharth, National Managing Partner, Growth and Clients and Markets for Grant Thornton. Warm welcome, Siddharth, for joining us in as well. Great. So with that perspective, maybe I will start with you, Siddharth. You know, the question really comes is, clearly, as we saw, the market is very buoyant, right? There is a lot of unicorns, there are a lot of listings people have announced. But I guess I will straight go to the question, I guess, which is everybody's mind is really around the pricing of the issues and valuations, right? We are also seeing issues around, not, I won't say issues, but things around the new age companies, right? The valuations are very different from, I won't say the old age, from some of the traditional brick and mortar models. How do you see the valuation play emerging? And what's your really take on some of the issues that have hit the market, and how do you see that hitting the market going forward?
Thanks, Raja. I wish I had a crystal ball, that'll help me answer that question. Being a merchant banker in past life, I think pricing of an issue and the valuation is only right or wrong with benefit of hindsight. The best you can do is, make sure that it is the right reason that you are going to the capital markets, which could be getting access to public capital, could be liquidity for shareholders, could be creating currency for growth, and various things. Capital markets in general are very fair. There is a method to the madness. Again, we can all sit back and say that a particular issue was overpriced or underpriced. Effectively using all tools that are available, which is really data and analytics around similar businesses in terms of industry, size, market. See, today triangulation of data is very easy and data is very accessible. What we also have to realize, and often we don't, that the investors in capital markets are the same people. It is common global capital that drives a lot of the liquidity. Now, the aberrations on valuation and pricing, again, what goes up comes down, what goes down comes up. I was taught as a young man that in the short term, markets move on sentiment, in the medium term on liquidity, and long term fundamentals. So as long as fundamentals of a business are clear and you've been upfront and represented in a fair manner everything about your business, the investors sitting on the other side, and I'm talking about institutional investors, they do pay heed to a lot of that. And it is, again, my view on that is that your listing price is only a beginning. I think the value that gets created over a period of time is what really is the benefit you get from accessing capital markets. We also need to keep in mind, when there are, I'll let Vivek and Manish comment later on, but you're only putting, a very small part of your equity, out to public shareholders. The real value that gets created for a promoter shareholder is in what is left behind. So it's always, one thing I would say is that if you believe your business is worth 100, you should leave 10 rupees on the table for the public. The public will appreciate it. The Dhirubhai Ambani model of value creation, and I bring that to fore, that a lot of people benefited because it created wealth for individual investors, for institutional investors, and they come back and they will honor that next time you access capital markets. So in summary, I don't think there is a crystal ball which will tell you whether the price is right or wrong. It is hindsight that creates that opinion, but working towards the fundamentals will keep the company's valuation fair, and in the long term create value. I think today there is so much liquidity in the market that a lot of things tend to get ignored. But if I look at scratch the surface and look below that, India is the only market where there is growth. And global capital actually is making a choice to come here. It is not, we're just benefiting because there is no alternative, but the fundamentals seem to be intact. The growth story seems to be intact. There are impediments on the way, and anything that helps us access the consumers that the India market offers, those businesses will always get highly valued. And I think the new age businesses and their recent capital markets debuts are all around that.
So thanks, Sid. I think very clearly talked about the fundamentals, right? And it's hindsight. I think you also alluded to the keeping money on the table. So a little bit about the entry pricing for the public investors to come in. Before I go to the other panelists, I also want to ask you a very fundamental question. Various stages of a company, right? There are companies which want to list, there are private equity, etc. But there are also companies which are maybe looking 5 years down the line. Now, is it always right to look at listing? Can you remain private? Or is it something that one definitely should be looking at part of when one is building its strategy for the next 5 years?
So, Raja, I think you should only, access public money if you have a need for it, and that need could be driven by capital or by to create liquidity around your shares. I think there is very successful life businesses can have remaining private. If you are in a lumpy revenue cycle business, you should look at listing. At least my personal view is look at listing as the possible last option of accessing capital, because you spend way too much time trying to explain your business model to people who are very used to month on month or as I saw, QSQT, quarter se quarter tak. So short answer is yes, there's a life remaining a private company, and still get external capital where if your earning streams are strong. Infrastructure businesses, for example, are loved by long-term private investors without a need to go public because your income streams support the return on capital.
Well, that's a great point, Siddharth. And I think, in terms of the optionality, that it is not a necessity that you have to do that, but you've got to carefully evaluate that. I think I'll just now go to Vivek. Obviously got successfully listed. I know you've been at the forefront of the process. Tell us a little bit about the preparation, right? Some of the war room stories, right? And what did it really take to make that happen?
Sure, Raja. So first off, not an expert in anything. Whatever I say is one man's view of one company's listing in first half of 2021. So there is context, there is timing. Yash, who's at the left-hand corner, is the real expert. He's done dozens of this over a period of time. So whatever I say, you have to take it with that filter that my experience is limited to what I learned. That's it. What it takes is, complete devotion to timelines. You have to be very, very disciplined. You have to be willing to be very unpopular for a brief duration of time in your life. There will be other IPOs. IPO windows are not infinitely long. In that time, the same advisors you're using would be on many other projects. The way you get them to work and give priority for your things would be, it's a very personal choice of style. We chose a very hard style. We did our entire process from kickoff to DRHP filing in 54 days. I wanted it done in 45. But the thing is, if we had chosen 60, it would have been 90. The thing is, whatever you choose, work will fill that much time. So you have to have a very, very strong deadline. Before you go into this entire IPO thing and answer these existential questions that you've been asking Sid on why list, should you list, all of those ones, I hope you answered that and much before, because in the middle of this process, you can't be having this doubt. You used a lot of war room and war analogies. In the middle of the battle, you shouldn't be wondering whether it is immoral to kill or not, because then you're really not in the right field, right? It is execution. Private equity companies, as Ramki will tell you, private equity owned companies have an advantage that they've been diligenced fairly thoroughly. People who have done 2 or 3 transactions recently would have a lot of these things ready, but for older companies, and if they are out there like people who are like me, from the real world, who make real products that you can touch and feel and not just services, they are typically older, and there will be a lot of secretarial work that over the years could have been missed. For finance companies, BFSI companies, RBI is one of the big bottlenecks if there is anything pending on RBI. A good idea, if you want to go public anytime in the near future, get a legal audit or legal diligence done on your own self. People like Yash's firm, Sam, the big ones, they have these crack teams who will come and do that for you. Get your legal secretarial in order. Our context was different. We were ready to go. But many won't be, and you will discover a lot of nasty surprises along the way, because every share from the first share issued, you have to show the entire trail of how it was transferred. Not very easy for oldish companies. Then compliances. I hope everyone is anyway compliant, whether private or public. I hope that's the discipline people do. But a lot of times there is not so much scrutiny by private company boards. Please get that in order even before you consider it. Third, boards. I hope everybody does it. We had another context that we were private equity, plus we were in a group with a large public listed company already. So because of that, our boards operated as if we were already public. If not, that is another step. All of this has to be done before you come to advisors. Advisors' reputation, of course, is a good indicator, but I would say even more than aptitude, attitude is very, very important. Because understand this, that there will be surprises, there will be 3 a.m. conference calls, those things are bound to happen. Get ready to sleep on mattresses in your office, because those things will also happen. And don't get rattled. It is part of the process, it's part of it. Don't make all your advisors, they are there for you. Don't fight your advisors. By the way, I know it seems very obvious when I say it, people fight their advisors a lot in an IPO process, especially your legal advisors. What they're trying to do is buy you insurance. And what you are fighting is that insurance might affect my valuation in the short term. Do not fight that. Your auditors are going, again, perhaps your greatest allies. Often overlooked rule, the preparation of accounts. And if you made a Gantt chart of all the activities in an IPO process, I think the bottlenecks would almost always come down to the audit activities. The circle-ups, the many rounds, and if you pass a quarter, then another quarter of audit. Your auditors, please request them to extend your team. If you are going for an IPO, please get an expanded team. Also, whatever number of arms and legs you think you have and can do the IPO, it will be less. Get an external advisor for preparedness, as well as we used a firm called Nova Dhruva, and we had just got good talent in form of a group CFO and a group legal head, Ajay and Rohit. They did bulk of the heavy lifting. I'm just getting the credit and sitting here talking as if I know what happened. I don't actually, but they also got help from outside.
So if I may ask Vivek on that, so did you have a core team which kind of managed the process? I know you were pretty much leading the effort, but just tell us a little bit about your team. So you had your own team, obviously a set of advisors. How did you structure this process?
So we had a lot of help, rather. We had a lot of help. We also had Blackstone operating team helping us. So to be honest, we had, like I said, Yash was involved. Yash's fellow partner, Gokul was there. Janvi was there. Then we had Trilegal, who was the bankers, lawyers. We had 4 or 5 sets of advisors. We had Nova Dhruva, who we got on board just to prepare us. The team was led by Rohit Nanda, who's a group CFO. And like I said, Ajay, he did most of the work. But the team did a lot of the heavy lifting. But you have to have one clear captain who's in charge. You can have opinions from others, but that guy takes the big calls.
Right. And in this case, you were the captain of the...
No.
You were not.
Group CFO.
Okay. Right. But if I may ask, if you were to identify one key, if I may say, learning, right? If you were to do that process again, is there anything that you would change in the process, or would you pretty much run the process? Because it's pretty important for others listening in who's going to prepare for an IPO. Is there anything that you would do differently?
Yeah, perhaps we could have done it in 9 days less. I always maintain that.
So timing, right? So timing is very critical.
No,
right?
The guy, I mean, today is 26/11. Today markets tanked. I feel for the people whose IPO came up today, right? You don't know what that will be and when that window closes. Time is absolutely essential, right? I mean, 11th September in the US was also a day. The guy who did his IPO on 10th at least got it through. The guy who was scheduled to do it on 12th, well,
Absolutely.
that did not happen. All I'm saying is time is very critical. There are parts, like Epictetus said, that are up to you and there are not up to you. What is up to you, you must push for time. SEBI is not up to you. SEBI's observations will come in its own due time. Regulatory parts will happen, and there will be a lot of events outside your control. Whatever is in is actually just about half of it. That you have to be, army-like in discipline there.
Sure. No, very, very, very clearly, I think you summarize it very straight, simple, timing. There's no wartime stories. It is something to be done, and focus on execution, and obviously the role of advisors you talked about. I guess I'll move on to Manish. Manish, obviously in a very different market segment, mobile gaming. It's a new age company. Tell us a little bit about your experience, about the preparation process or factors that you really considered while doing the listing.
Raja, whether you're a new sector, old sector, real world, virtual world, what Vivek has described, that remains safe. Because SEBI doesn't give a fig about what you're doing, right? What it gives you is that your DRHP and there, your lawyer, BRLM lawyer and auditors, what they write is Bible. And one thing which you would understand is that when you're going from private to public, all your salesy talks, all your superlatives, all your adjectives, they just go out of the window, right? It's a beautiful discipline which you learn, and the conditioning of mind which you go through in that process actually doesn't leave you even after IPO. Like till date in my investor calls, I've conditioned in my mind not to use any prefixed superlatives thanks to Yash, because he will rap me on my knuckles all the time that this is not allowed, this is not allowed, this is not allowed. Whatever escapes, if it escapes from CAM, AZB, which are the BRLM lawyer, they will catch it. One tried to push that let's kind of expedite the process of having DRHP and roadshow deck in parallel, so that like Vivek, I was also wanting to say that let's kind of get feedback from the market before we are kind of doing DRHP and all that thing. No, the definition of silent period started from the kickoff call. So yes, guys, kickoff call is your silent period, and after that you are bound by that code. That as if you're a listed company and you're talking in a sanitized manner. So I think the stories, the preparation, and everything which Vivek has said remains very, very clear. The only thing which I like to add is you need one guy which is so obsessed, so engaged, and really, really wants it to happen. You need that guy who is absolutely the rock solid, who's not going to kind of rattle, will rally people. There'll be ups and downs. There'll be skirmishes with your advisors. There'll be frustrations on both sides. But that shiddat with which this guy really works and says that ye hona hai aur aaj hona hai aur is samay hona hai, because time is important. All of us know the COVID hit us in April and we did our IPO on 30th March, right? And that's what it is, guys. Like 5 days later, we could have been got into lockdown and COVID and all that shit which would have hit us. Now, 5 days in a normal project network, how does it matter? That's fine, it happens. But when you're really doing an IPO, 5 days can change your life forever. And a great example, which again Vivek gave, is at 10th versus 11th, right? The life bird change for some companies. So you need to have that one individual. Second thing, which I will kind of tell everyone, and I tell whosoever comes to me for advice, once you have found that captain, urge to give advice or micromanage by promoters or CEOs or anybody else. Just forget about this 3 months, let him be or her be. Because if you constantly keep giving your unsolicited advice, I always say, ehsan karo ki ehsan mat karo. Right? You are in execution, you really kind of do not want to disturb that guy. You don't want to be really half a kilometer radius of that guy, right? Because at that point of time, if the guy is really good, he will forget the protocols. He is not going to really care for that you are an army general or a promoter or something. He has to really go and win that battle, right?
Sure.
So that intensity, he is driving it. And if you want to kind of torpedo it, you're torpedoing the whole process. So just kind of have that A, individual whom you trust, B, do not disturb him. Third, do not optimize. I've seen a lot of discussions happening. Shall we restructure this now? Shall we do this kind of thing now? Boss, no creativity. The creativity is over. Now, whatever it is on piece of paper, it is done and dusted. Now, bloody go and write it down. You can't keep optimizing while you are running at 150 kilometers per hour or 200 kilometers per hour. You can't be just creative. Okay, let me see if I can dig a tunnel here and find a path, new path from Bombay to Pune. No, it doesn't happen, right? So I think those are the simple experiencing things which really work. And from the set of advisors, I think names don't matter, frankly, and I'm saying it with due respect here. It is the individuals who are working with you, they matter. Because ultimately, that's the guy or team which is going to be with you at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., or going to have, like our office is at Marine Drive, going to have morning chai at 6 a.m. at the Chowati and saying that aaj raat nikal gayi, kal ki raat kal dekhte hain, right? So you need that kind of team person who is thinking that, owning that whole process and saying that it's my company, it's my process, rather than throwing attitude, I am XYZ and I am doing ABCD. It doesn't matter. So I think that finding that comfort in that attitude or in temperament is very important. And if you have found that temperament in your lawyers and your auditors, you are very, very good condition.
So one question, Manish, I think you clearly talked about one person, that passion, that individual to really drive this. I think Vivek talked about that 49 days, right? He would like it to be shorter, and there was a private equity, there was anyway preparation. From your perspective, how much time did you really take to prepare? Is it
I think
a year, couple of years?
Raja, there are two parts of it. One is kickoff call to DRHP. But a lot of work should happen before kickoff call. Like your Janam Kundli, what he's saying of company secretarial and legal is nothing but your Janam Kundli. That you have to really get it right. And that the more complicated structure, and we Indian companies love complicated structures, right? We'll create subsidiaries and this and that, and then one subsidiary is going to another thing, all sorts of nonsense, right? The more complicated you are, the more Janam Kundli you have to be clear. And have that preparation happening much before then when you have a kickoff call. My suggestion is your kickoff call should happen when your legal audit, company secretarial audit has happened. You have got a list of things to do. You have a very clarity, these things can be managed. I would go to my lawyer and saying that, boss, ye 5 cheezein we cannot manage. Do you think we can do an IPO with it or not? Right? Having that clarity is so important rather than discovering it in the process and saying that, oh my God, now what to do it, right?
Right.
That is one thing which is important. Second thing is, while the current year audits are important, and they are the time-consuming things because data is not there. But what about past years? Why do you have to really wait and keep sitting on it until the time when we have kickoff call? You can really create in whatever format you need, right? Whether it's now in days, whether it's 2 years, whether you have quarter, whatever shit. But get it done before kickoff call. What's your team doing and sitting, right? So that's the second piece. Third piece, in my opinion, is very important to start talking like a KPI dashboard, like a quarterly KPI dashboard, which you are going to really talk to your investors and post listing, so that every quarter you are talking like a listed company, and all of a sudden, one day you are talking about X parameter being nice, and next day you're talking about Y parameter being nice, third time you're talking about Z parameter being nice. You can't just keep shifting your narrative after a listed company, right? So creating a set of dashboard which are leading indicators to your P&L and staying through that on quarter, good, bad, ugly, and presenting to your board is important. I think these three things, if you are able to do 9 months before a kickoff call, 45 day to 60 day, depending upon what kind of people, advisor, team, arms, legs you have, you can pull it off.
So effectively, at least a 1 year process, right? At least that's the time that it takes to get yourself
to kind of get your house in order.
Yeah.
You should do that so that you are not kind of really bungling up. A lot of people, because of this whole IPO craze, are just kind of waking up and saying that we want to do IPO as soon as possible. Be my guest.
Sure. No, thanks, Manish. I think very clearly articulated, and I think I liked your comment on attitude. Right, it's not just the firm, but the people that you work with. It's the skills and the attitude. It has to get done, which is similar. Vivek talked about. So I'll come to Yash. Seems like Yash, you've been really kind of making sure that the 3 a.m. calls do happen, and also making sure that what not to say in those calls. But tell us a little bit about the environment also, the legal environment, right? It's a frenzy of activity that we have seen. How do you see the legal environment also moving, especially the regulators, right? They have a very key stakeholder in this. So that'll be the first question really to get from you.
So I'd start, but before that, both Vivek and Manish mentioned, but both of them actually started work much before. So whilst Vivek tells you this very short, crisp timeline, there was a major issue in relation to their history. And Rohit, Vivek was not in the front. I'm sure he's involved, but Rohit, his CFO, and was leading the whole process, worked out the disclosure before the kickoff. So it was such a big issue. We knew the disclosure. We knew what we were going to write. We didn't have to. Once the process started, we just moved on. Similarly with Manish, there was another investor. There was a pre-consult with SEBI on certain matters, and Manish may remember we had all that sorted before the kickoff, right? So and this I'm seeing actually very interestingly. So end of February, I was on vacation. My children had a break. One of the private equity guys called me saying we want to do a call with this company today. So I said, I don't even know the company. They said, no, we've done a bit of homework. There are 4 big issues we've seen. What is your solution on all 4? So we said, okay, on this. That company's kickoff happened after Feb end. The company's been listed now for more than a month, right? So this is a very important part where people are saying, let's not do the kickoff. Let's identify 4 or 5 big issues. And now people have actually, it's not recorded anyway, but SEBI allows a pre-consult. And Nazara made use of that. So you can go to SEBI with an application and get some clarity in black and white. So I think the homework is very important. And I completely agree. There are a lot of people who we do calls with us saying, I'm still in the process of appointing my company secretary. My CFO interviews are on. So I'm like, I appreciate the timeline and the market and all that, but there's no way you as the founder can sit and give me secretarial records. Like, it's not going to happen, right? You have a million things to manage. So like, can we start in a month? And they're like, you don't have bandwidth. That's why you're lying to us. So I'm like, it's up to you. I'm just trying to tell you, it's going to be madness. No, but you want to start tomorrow. So I think this preparation, this identification of issues, which I think mature companies, investors, particularly private equity investors, have realized identification of issues is becoming very important. And this leads in well to my question, why? SEBI is, I think people forget number of issues which have happened in the last 18 months. I've been doing this for 20 years. The quality of comments which SEBI used to give versus what it gives now. And we've done deals across the world, right? So we can compare regulatory scrutiny and feedback.
And yes, if you can, it'll be great if you can. So a number of issues, absolutely completely up to you. But what are the typical top 2-3 issues that we have seen? That'll be great too.
Yeah, Raja. So earlier SEBI would rarely comment on the MD&A. There were not enough people at their end who were chartered accountants. But then over the last 4-5 years, they've hired chartered accountants. So the recent comments, the last 3-4 months, firstly, SEBI is turning around documents in 60 days, except if there's a serious issue. Except if there's a serious issue with the company, you can be assured that your entire process, start to finish, will be done in 60 days, right? The type of comments, the first, in fact, today, we filed documents a few weeks back, not even like 3 weeks, 21 days is when they give the first set of comments. SEBI is calling the banker and said, I've read the document. I have some questions. Can you explain the document to me and the business to me? And I have 5 questions, which I'll send you an email this evening and come back to me. Right? And these questions are phenomenal. As in, I'm really proud to say that our regulator, whilst, there's a lot of criticism of SEBI on valuation, which is not a science. As in, it's an art and a science and everything else, right? And the regulator tries very hard in India, but its regulator can't fully monitor price. But in terms of quality of disclosures, in a market where there's so much history, there's so many complications with promoters. We have various situations where promoter groups have issues, where there are every issue. I tell you, Raja, there are 5 to 7 people complaining to SEBI. This guy owes me money. Company's contract is not signed. I sent so much to the company. This is a problem with the app of this company. This is a problem. Everybody in India wants to use the IPO to blackmail the company. These are all commercial disputes. I'm not saying these are not valid. Maybe they are valid. We are seeing situations where people left the company 10 years back. When the IPO start writing to the company saying, you owe me money, you owe me shares, you owe me ESOPs. So what were you doing for 10 years? If you had a genuine issue, you should have written when you left. So the regulator gets the complaint. So the regulator has to deal with that. The regulator has pressure from parliament. The regulator has pressure nowadays from other regulators in the country. So the job has become much more difficult, but the quality of comments on the industry section have exponentially gone up. As in, there have been some issues earlier this year where industry sections were written in a flowery manner. And why is the industry section so important? So that I give context. A company like Nazara or Sona can't write forward-looking statements. It can't. But they can write what is the size of the industry, right? And for Sona and others, which are more brick and mortar, you can do some calculation and reach a reasonable sum. For Nazara also, it's doable, though as Manish will say, his industry is going so fast and he's acquiring so many companies that it's sometimes difficult to calculate. But the issue is this TAM, total accessible market is a calculation. So, and I think today the regulators starting to get a bit worried. So it's already issued a consultation paper. And prior to that, it has already given guidance to the banks that they want the banks to do diligence on the industry report. It's a factual report. So you can see the regulators reacted very quick. The regulator to react so quickly. And now we are very circumspect. We don't allow comparisons, random comparisons. People are taking surveys of 1,000 people and saying this survey said I'm the best. So I'll take a survey on the factory floor where I work and I'll say I'm the best, right? So we are, as lawyers, we are the gatekeepers, the bankers are the gatekeepers. So we are blocking surveys. So industry report is becoming a big issue where SEBI is commenting.
Sure.
The business section. People are writing complicated business sections. The thumb rule, if you look at US SEC and other, in fact, there's a beautiful document available on US SEC website, how to write in simple English. The test, at least I have used historically, is my father should be able to read the document. Not that he buys shares, he's 72, but he should be able to understand company karti hai. The main issue today, which we struggle on till the 4th drafting session, is where is the revenue coming from? It's difficult today for many companies to understand where is revenue. Simple, just not profit. Where is revenue coming from, right? Then in the 4th drafting session, you have to tell the bankers and the company, can we have a paragraph to say revenue comes to us from A, B, C, D, right? Investors should know that. So these are the challenges. And then SEBI is asking, in a recent comments, which I cannot give the name of the issuer, SEBI has questions on, you have given this number, can you split it up in geographies? Can you split it up and explain to me how you've written you have 5 businesses. So give me the numbers for each business, right? So SEBI is giving really good comments. SEBI is asking the right questions. And SEBI has learned in the last 6 months, because we've seen these companies only approach the markets from about March, April. So they've been really quick on the learning curve. Of course, SEC and all this year, they've been 500 IPOs, whatever, some hundreds of IPOs in the US, in NASDAQ, and NYSE and SEC. But we haven't had the same number. But
yes, in terms of the comments, just again, how much time does it take, ordinarily to deal with these comments? Obviously, it depends on various situations, but a company, say you said that it can take 4 to 5 months just to deal with the comments response and get the satisfaction.
No, not at all. Not at all. 5 days. 5 days. You get 5
to resolve all the comments.
Yeah, and if you have someone like Vivek tracking the whip, then you respond in 2 days. We've responded. But the comments involve feedback from the company. So the company has to be ready. The people at the company have to say, fine, comments have come. I'm providing the data. We have to quickly go to our auditor to sign off on the numbers. And, we split up. The moment the comments come, we put in an Excel sheet. And we split up the responsibilities. Company, lawyers, auditors, all of us work overnight. And that's clearly overnight work. You have to work 36, 48 hours, get the document. First round of comments are easier. The second round actually are co-terminus with the UDRHP, which is the liability document under global requirements, etc. So those we are working like mad to even, deal with the comment, but also put it in the offer document. Because what's also interestingly happened These people are only focusing on the unicorns. But this year, and Sona Comstar as an example, has been the year of massive JV IPOs. So we've seen Sona Comstar, we've seen Aditya Birla AMC, and a whole lot of others. There are 2-3 others which got delayed, and I can't name them. But we have seen various joint ventures actually approach the markets. While Sona was a relatively simple agreement between the shareholders, on other situations we've had very complex discussions saying, I want this, I want that, and it's become that can take time. And SEBI's already put rules on that. They're not available in public domain, but SEBI's put rules. I will allow this, I will not allow this. So there's a lot of, because SEBI is very clear. Both boards of a company should run the company after listing, not the shareholders. Day to day, I don't have to keep going back to shareholders. Companies Act says dividend dena hai, shareholders ke paas jao. No problem. But you should not say that, can I have a board meeting? Shareholder, please approve. Business plan, shareholder, please approve. So SEBI is saying, please, we have good boards, we have independent directors, requirement of women directors, all that. So I want boards to run companies. Plus, we've had professionally managed companies with founders holding 2-3%. The struggle is, and founders don't realize, they don't have great agreements. They don't have great employment agreements. They literally, each founder can be thrown out 6 months after the IPO when the lockup goes, right? Because they hold 2-5%. How will they, if there's a large open offer by a global player, how will they survive? So we've had to evolve a lot of contractual benefit for them and explain it to SEBI. Plus, we've had large private equity driven companies who are private equity as promoter. This is a new concept. It's only 4 years old in our market. Historically, SEBI did not allow private equity as promoter. SKS was the first. And since then, from the last 5 years, there've been a lot. So our regulator has been learning, improvising. So I think it's been a fabulous sort of last 3-4 years where we keep criticizing the regulator, but I think a lot of companies have been able to approach the markets because of the flexibility of the regulator. And the regulator has to, all are not the same. Everybody's not a Sona Comstar. The auditors are not peer reviewed, right? And literally, there are auditors who have the same address as a company. There are auditors who are sitting 50 meters from the company, right? The auditors who are sitting in the company's office before the results have come. So we are concerned, as advisors, we want to protect, we have some responsibility to the markets. We have some responsibility. Investors may not invest on the basis of Cyril Amritsar Mangaldas on an offer document, but there's a degree of work or comfort that they may derive that some work has been done. That's at least what we like to believe.
So what you're saying, Yash, very clearly that SEBI is definitely responding pretty quickly. They are on top of it, the questions they are asking. But just if you were to fast forward next 12 months, do you see some of this changing, let's say the regulations or even the kind of tone of some of the questions that they ask? Because you want to see a flurry of new age companies potentially coming into the market where we will have questions on the revenue and the revenue models. But do you see that change coming?
I see changes coming on the objects. SEBI did allow flexibility on objects earlier part of this year. SEBI is now starting to relook at that. SEBI has issued a consultation paper. I see some amount of SEBI restriction coming on size of the issue in terms of fresh versus secondary. I don't think SEBI is comfortable with private equity completely exiting. I think they would like them to continue for some time. I see changes coming in SEBI wanting simplification of the business and industry sections. I think we've taken it to a level where you have to be a sophisticated analyst to understand some of these sections. So I see the regulator wanting, though to be fair, the businesses are complex. If you take a lot of businesses which have got listed in the last 4-5 months, it's a big struggle for them even to, because they've grown so fast, they've acquired companies. The other thing which we are seeing is people, and in life, you can either do an IPO, which is raise capital, or you can do an M&A. And they both are in different directions. For the first time in my life, in the last 12 months, people have said, start the IPO and then I'll do an acquisition, right? So during the preparation, this 50 days when people are doing from kickoff to DRHP, someone's acquired a company. I'm like, how much mind space can you have as a company to do both? It's not possible. And then and boards have to take liability for the new company, which people forget. You take full liability. You can't say, I just acquired it, so I don't have liability for that. You are selling equity shares right at the top. So you take liability for everything below, including the newly acquired business or part of the business. So we are seeing a lot of acquisitions. I see regulator wanting to put more disclosures on the acquisitions. I see regulator getting more finicky on the accounts, because I think up to now, pro forma and other things and all the big six of the country have been saying ye nahi denge, wo denge. I see the regulator wanting more in line with global best practices, predecessor accounts and things. So I'm seeing the regulator being very savvy, getting to learn quickly and implementing it. So some of these changes will come, Raj.
So that's great points, Yash. I think that's great for the market as well as the market deepens and matures. moving to Ramki now, right, means very clearly, you've spent many, many years in the PE industry. You've seen so many companies, you've been on boards. But just tell us about the private equity perspective, right? Means, at least I've seen once a private equity comes in, the governance standards changes. But how do you see this flurry of private equity owned listings? Because most of the unicorns are PE funded. And do you see this continuing? And because some of the times the exits are also in some ways determined by the investors. So great to get your.
Yeah, thanks, Raja. Raja, I mean, you had actually asked one question to Sid in the past: is IPO a necessity? I mean, I always compare an IPO as a graduation in the corporate life of any company. So that answers, do you need graduation? I mean, it's anybody's guess. But I guess getting a private equity investor is actually entering the graduation, and then you got to complete the graduation subsequent to that. If you look at historically, I mean, maybe 20 years ago or so when we started, I mean, probably the biggest exit option or the only exit option, I don't want to use the word only, used to be an IPO because, I mean, whether you look at buybacks, etc., these are all kind of fallback options, but not the real exit options. And strategic sale as an IPO, as an exit option was not very common in India. Most of the Indians actually want to see the company public, and that's a matter of pride. And also, you can see the company grow. So historically, I think IPO was the only or the main exit option. And now, as a private equity investor, I would say majority of the cases when you invest, you would kind of look at an IPO as an exit option, though you would have other options listed. I mean, maybe there are certain sectors where there could be only a strategic option, but otherwise in the regular course, it is a exit option, usually is an IPO. You actually spoke about, again, governance, etc., and what Vivek and Manish said in terms of preparation. One of the biggest advantages if doing a private equity round is you kind of actually crossed one path to actually get into that. As I say, you've already entered graduation. So you completed your basic requirements, you completed your diligence, and quote unquote, the whole governance aspects. Mind you, I think one of the main things all of us got to remember is that the management of the company is the trustee of the investor's money. The moment you actually understand this, I think a lot of things will be very clear, because once you're a trustee, you have the responsibility of actually taking good care of it and also communicating the whole thing to it. So as a private equity investor, you probably start building these blocks in the next 2-3 years of your existence. For example, the most simple thing being a board composition. I mean, historically, what was a family held board, you kind of broad base. And I guess 90% of the investors would insist that you got to have independent directors. You start creating the committees. I mean, I think the most important thing, Raja, is you do all of this, but to actually operationalize all of this. I mean, it takes time. It takes time because if you're actually dealing with a promoter who has run a company in a particular fashion for 20 years, he will agree for whatever you want at the time of investment. But how do you operationalize this after you invest? I think that's where some bit of maturity has to be there. It can't be binary. You can't go and tell him, aaj se aisa karo. Aisa nahi hota hai. You got to kind of build that whole confidence in him and then build the trust and confidence. The second thing is...
I think just building on that, Ramki, I think made a wonderful comment. One is a process, the other is a mindset, as you said, the trusteeship mindset. Because once you're public, right, you are responsible till you become private, right, if you want to delist. So do you see that as a challenge? Means you've obviously seen various companies, you see that change, right? So one is the process, getting all those implemented. The other is the mindset of culture, right? Disclosures, transparency, as you said, actually making the boards independent. So do you see that as a challenge?
It's not a challenge, Raja. It takes time. It takes time. It is all about expectations management. I mean, you can't get into the company and next day you can't be asking. I mean, you don't want to be seen as a policing officer there. You got to be seen as a good partner. And the moment the promoter on the other side understands that he's a partner, and then whatever I'm doing is for the benefit of the company, and as Yash rightly said, maybe a large portion of the wealth is still with the promoter. So whatever you are trying to recommend is only to help him actually grow his wealth, I think then it's all done. It's a building the trust and confidence. I mean, we all learned it over a period of time, but it happens, it takes time, that's all. See, I think a lot of people, I keep telling them, listen, IPO is not just a financing event, it is a strategic event. I think the moment promoters understand that it's a strategic event, I think half the battle is won. You got to tell them that it's a branding exercise. You got to tell them that there is actually this whole trusteeship post-listing, and how do you kind of manage that process? Most of us here, we are all dealt with old age principles of the PSP. How do you have this predictable, sustainable and profitable growth? How do you actually communicate the same thing to them? I guess you got to start building this. Raja, one of the things you had asked in the past is there a way to shorten the whole process and preparation? I guess when you actually invest in a company and you see IPO as a 90% probable, why don't you start preparing from year two itself? I mean, you had anyway created a data room, right? How much time does it take to actually update it on a yearly basis? And as Vivek rightly said, maybe 6 months, 1 year prior, why don't you get an external guy to take a look at this and say that how prepared you are? I think if you have this discipline of constantly updating this, I think you are actually in a good place. The second thing is a whole reporting system. I mean, as a private equity investor, we have the standard MISs, and then we have seen, you and I have seen what kind of fights people had saying that I want in this format, mujhe aise hi mil raha hai, etc. It's an evolution. I mean, you got to actually take what is there and then start building on top of it. By the time you get to an IPO, you got to remember that what is the market looking for? How am I actually presenting it? Because as a private equity investor, maybe I'm looking at a lot of operational data, but as a market investor, you are looking at a specific set of information about the underlying value and the wealth creation. How do you create this and communicate this? That's very, very important. A lot of people actually don't invest in investor relations. I think that is something which people got to remember. It's worth it. And it actually creates wealth for not just the market, but for the promoter also. You got to invest in investor relations.
Well, that's a lot of many points you've covered, Ramki. Means, I think, communication, governance, it takes time. There's some companies which has obviously done it very quickly because they've already started preparing much ahead in advance. And I really loved your comment on it is not a financing event, but a strategic event. So you're really deciding as a strategy that you will get listed, plan today and prepare today, and why wait for tomorrow? So fabulous comments, Ramki. I'll maybe just go back quickly to Vivek and Manish, right? Post listing, right? Very successfully listed. Now war room stories, it's gone, everything is done. But what has changed? Has business changed? Has processes changes, organization changes? Is there anything changed that one really needs to take into mind post listing? Vivek?
Yeah, more people know me. I have to be more careful about what I say in public. Still in private, I get away with a lot, but not much else. I think Sid had said that when you take money and QSQT, and Ramki had said about trust. Look, it's almost a sacred trust. Once you take the public's money, you can't complain about all this and mock it by saying QSQT, oh, we are long term and all of that. Why can you get off on that? I mean, whatever high horse you're on, you need to get off. Don't come and list if you're that kind of company, to be honest. Even if you are 10 years is your roadmap, right? That you're a long-term vision company, 10 years is where the goal is. That's just 40 quarters. In a 10-year journey, you're saying it's too much to meet the people whose money you have taken 40 times and tell them that what you're doing and answer their questions?
Sure.
Once you take public money, you're accountable to the public. If you don't want to do that, don't come. And all this sales pitch and all, like Manish rightly said, if you set some metrics, you made certain promises, answer on those promises while taking the money. You can't now invent new goalposts and say, ab main ye khelunga. Kal tak football tha, aaj main hockey khelne wala. You can't keep doing those things. I think it's a great discipline to have, and it's actually not that onerous. It is once every quarter. You do one earnings call for 1.5 hours, then you meet some shareholders. Within 2 weeks, it's all done, trust me. It's not that hard, and it must be done. Frankly, I think people get away with a lot under that this is forward, this is not. You choose your communication style. You don't want to give forward guidance like we've chosen. We don't give future guidance at
We
all.
don't give any future guidance.
We don't. We're going to stick to that. We will talk about what our strategic priorities are. They are the same that we went on the road shows with. We are sticking to that, and we will update transparently. Do not try to be suddenly inventing new roadblocks to what you were communicating. The Manisha talked about those KPIs. Build it early, stick with it, and then when you're public, keep reporting on that. If those are the KPIs that truly define you. If you want to change, nobody has said you have to perform like a dancing monkey. If there is a goal, there is a roadmap, and you will find out if there are people who are there just for the short-term opportunistic, they will also go. Capital markets are great at finding that equalization level, right? The kind of people who will stick with you will be your people. So it is a trust thing. It is two-way. You have built it, now live it. That's the biggest advice. And be authentic. Don't try, there is no cookie cutter approach. Actually, we shouldn't be advising anyone. Me or Manish, I'm sure Manish is being himself when he communicates to his investors. I'm being myself. And it doesn't matter. One of the biggest principles is it doesn't matter if you're talking to Fidelity or you are talking to Farida Begum from Hyderabad who holds one share. It doesn't matter. You're supposed to give the exact same information to both. You are supposed to not give future guidance to one. All of that you can't do. You have to treat people exactly the same. They all have the exact same right. That accountability and ownership, if you don't have and are not willing to build, that actually should be the biggest filter of should you go public or not.
Sure.
Forget money and all. If you're not that guy, please don't do it.
I think very well said, Vivek. I think you summarized it very clearly. Accountability and trust. That's and being authentic, right? And I guess that once you're in the public market, Manish, your comments post listing, life changed.
I think just to add on what Vivek said, and all of them are true. Ditto copy, absolutely. And market does not like people who keep changing stories, who are not themselves, who are not honest. It's very simple, because that whole fabric of trust gets broken, and once it's broken, it's a very small word, and you are kind of gone, in my opinion. And you can't keep faking it. You can't keep faking it, right? So it's better that you don't even try to fake it. You just be what you are and what you can do. But more importantly, what has changed for me? It was a strategic decision to go for IPO. It was not a financing tool. It was not to give exit to any investors, right?
Oh.
And which is what we have really kind of taken bull by the horn, and we are running at a great speed, because now we see that huge opportunity from access to capital and using this as a currency for consolidation of market is truly available. And as Vivek said, just the IPO has made us more visible, more popular, more brand, not just in India, but globally. And hence, the inflow of the investor queries, which are large enough, which won't have really come in, is happening. More importantly, one of the biggest thing which I really like about is that everything is, my entire information is out in the public, and whatever is out in the public is the information I can give. Beyond that, I can't give anything to anyone. My presentations are on websites, my financials are on website. Now, if anyone wants to know anything, I can't comment on it, right? So good, bad, ugly, that's what it is, right? And that really helps us in discussions with potential companies and their investors, because they have done their homework, they have done their reading, they know what Nazara is, and that really helps us. Because unlike earlier, we had to Sunawa Ramayan to everyone. Now we don't need to Sunawa Ramayan, right? We are a kind of a known guys. So there is that. I believe if you have taken an IPO as a strategic route, then the acceleration which you can really do, and the hunger and the ambition which you can really have, you can go and fulfill that. In my dictionary, there is nothing called status quo. Either you will grow or you will decline. And if you decline, the market is ruthless. And if you continue to keep on growing, it gives you an opportunity to grow and grow faster. So yes, another point which I like to tell, besides your temperament and your patience and trust and scrutiny, is that volume and velocity both are important. And just do not think that I have a volume and hence I can sit on my laurels and market will appreciate. Velocity is equally important, and you have to work double hard to make that expectation of yourself has to be, forget about anybody else, your own expectation on volume velocity has to be pretty high standards if you want to really kind of use this opportunity which has come to you. And lot many people will do it. There is always an element of luck because you have been lucky to kind of get it right time. God has been kind to you. Take that opportunity to create volume velocity and be thankful about it, and don't think that yes, everybody can kind of do it.
True. Right. No, great comments, Manish. I think volume velocity, particularly the growth momentum of the business needs to continue because, as you rightly said, that the market will price itself and they will evaluate themselves and price that. I guess, Sid, coming to you is we obviously heard about the pre-preparation, the post. In your view, what is the role of project management over here? I guess Vivek talked about the really one go-to person, and I know in our firm we are building that practice pretty well in terms of the digital, the business transformation, as well as the project management office. How do you see that role important for companies going for IPO, and not just hitting the market, right? Post listing as well, right? There is so much of compliances that needs to get done in an orderly fashion. How do you see that role of project management office, digital and business transformation advisors can play a role and to help companies?
What I think Vivek talked about it, that it is a momentous and a gigantic exercise, and asking for help from experts is something I would say a company should not shy away. It is a dedicated effort. Either you can create that bandwidth by freeing up people from other projects, because this can't be done on the side. Very clearly, taking a company public can't be done on the side. You supplement through support from outside advisors. You bring in specialists, even full time if you need to. I think Ramki talked about investor relations. It's a very important role, and I will talk about that in a second. But to find an investor relations person before you go public makes a lot of sense. So your entire theme, your communication, you get in the groove, right? You're preparing for an event, so you already know what's going to happen post event, and an investor relation expert can do that. Experts for hire make a lot of sense. Allow you bandwidth, allow you to have that experience. And I would talk about, even if lawyers are not required, the value that the lawyers and the legal firm add in your issue through the experience they've had with working with similar companies, different companies. Again, I think Vivek, you talked about getting you the right insurance for your future. Going forward, once you're a public company, you have a fiduciary responsibility. You need to communicate regularly. You need to make sure that the good news is out there, but you also need to make sure that the bad news is out there quicker. How do you get your company covered by research? Because and I think this is a lot of the old school merchant bankers will tell you that listing ke baad bhi counter chalna chahiye. That is important, right? And the way to do that is to have the right kind of research that gets covers your company. The engagement with research analysts is also very important, because there are a few things that you learn. They bring in a sense of benchmarking. They tell you what else is happening in your industry. So it's a two-way, right? It's if you put something in the pot of the research analyst, they'll put something back, and together that makes allows you to look at what is around the corner or what are opportunities. I mean, today growth is an imperative. That growth can come through inorganic, getting a sense of what your competition is doing. So I think there is merit definitely during the process to augment the bandwidth, if nothing else. The project management office also allows you to adhere to timelines. It allows you to look at areas where you may be falling short and pull that. And it is run it as a project as opposed to something on the side. And I think post listing, investor relations, research coverage, talking to investors. I mean, taking the time out to go and meet the big investors is another element that you need to continue to get into a habit of. And sometimes it is easier to do that through advisors because, not every company has that same outlook or approach where, advisors can, help you bridge that gap and provide that, I would say the additional last mile for some of these activities.
No, great.
Raja, just one, Raja,
Yeah.
just one point here on investor relationship, and just from experience, and Vivek can chime in. I think there are two parts of it. One is just the coordination logistics of it, and other is a real, honest business interaction, which you do with investors. And a lot of time people mistake that you need somebody who's good, fluent in talking, smooshing, swag, and all that stuff. No, that is not your investor relationship guy. What you need is somebody who has a deep understanding of business and can simplify it and explain to the investors in a very simple, lucid manner and a consistent manner. So that is a very important aspect. And I would urge all those who are really listening here to not make that mistake, because then you will kind of really fall short, and whether you're CEO or CFO will constantly get sucked into those meetings because investors are not going to be satisfied with the answers they're getting.
Oh, great point, Manish. I think very, very practical advice. It needs to be clear to the investors. So I guess we'll wrap it up with, I think, one question for all of you, which is, if you were to really two questions for each one of you. I think one is your outlook on Indian capital markets, maybe next decade, if you were to fast forward next decade, right? We've already seen the best year of IPOs India today. And second is, if there is one top advice you would like to give to any company which is looking for a listing, let's say 5 years down the line, they're not listing ready, what would that be? And maybe I'll start with Ramki first.
Yeah.
How do you see next 10 years, and one top advice for company?
So I think, Raja, I mean, we have seen a very buoyant market for the last 12 plus months. And definitely, if there is no major accident, next 12 plus months will definitely be good. Markets will be cyclical. I think we got to be ready. We got to be ready for such periods too. I mean, any investor in the public market shouldn't be looking at a moment of time. I mean, it's a long run. If you say in the next 10 years, definitely markets will do well. I mean, it's nobody has any sense to say that what's going to be nifty 10 years from now, but definitely in the long run, they will do well. It will be cyclical, but long run, given what's happening in the economy, the growth rate, etc., etc. One advice which you had asked is, I think Vivek and Manish spoke very well in terms of the post-listing thing. Again, I want to reiterate that investor relations, you got to invest in investor relations and bring in a person with a business sense, like what Manish mentioned. A person, really senior person, don't get a junior guy. Get a really senior person who can talk your business, who can be actually the right-hand man for the CEO in a manner of speaking. And I guess it has to be a no surprise policy, Raja. I think markets don't like surprise. Just a no surprise policy will actually will actually establish well in the markets for you for the long run, to say, communicate well and ensure that there's a fair amount of transparency. And you have seen, look at the same industry and you take 5 companies. Why is one company getting better discounting than the other? It's about transparency. It's about communication, no surprise policy. I think that's what I would probably say, Raja.
Sure. So markets will remain buoyant and no surprise policy and transparency. Yash?
Thanks. No, I think the others on this have better sense of the markets, but in terms of just our pipelines, it's looking fairly healthy. So I think at least for the next 12, 24 months, clearly it seems that things will go on. I think I do expect to see a bunch of companies now who've listed here trying to do ADRs. We've seen one, but I see that and this is not the direct listing part, Raja, but just having listing on 2 platforms.
Yeah.
for trying to get investors globally. So I think that clearly happening.
And you see that trend
As a trend, yes. I see that as a trend in the next 12, 24 months, because I think they will be valued well here, but they may want more trading, they may want more sort of, a lot of these companies are not going to make profit, but they will, all GMV companies, they will want to get more investors, they will need more capital to burn. So I see that resulting in moving to US markets and having dual listing, etc. So I see that happening. But first listing will be in India. I think Zomato has ensured that first listing for everyone will now be in India, and then people will do the other listing. The second part, in terms of top advice, I think, Raja, you may not remember, I spoke at a GD conference some years back on international listing, and a gentleman, I don't remember whether he's from GD or from SEC or NASDAQ, his advice, which I've never forgotten, is companies who want to do an IPO next year, year after, whenever, get used to quarterly financial preparation. I just see every deal, where companies which get delayed, we obviously blame auditors and blame the financial statement, but companies are just not, it's like running a marathon. You can't run it if you don't prepare. You can't suddenly prepare financials, so quickly, because you're not used to it. So companies should start, it's a cost. I don't disagree. It's a cost, but getting that preparation, showing it to your board, as Vivek said, getting the board to question it will set you in good rhythm whenever you do your IPO. I think that's some discipline. If that can be there, the rest, and once you start doing that, your legal, your secretarial, all of it starts fitting in, because auditors are not, today auditors in India don't take shortcuts, as in they cannot afford to take shortcuts given the structure and the responsibility cast on them. So they will ensure you want good legal support, good secretarial support. So I think the best thing would be to prepare quarterly financials.
quarterly financials. Great. Vivek?
Yeah, I have no knowledge of capital markets, so nothing on that. Advise, remember who your bosses are. The shareholders are your bosses, not the other way around. And yeah, be humble. There are good quarters right now. Everyone's benefiting, and we are sitting here. You like successful listing and all. Things change in public markets overnight. Same people who built you up without knowing you will tear you down without caring about you, right? It happens. So be humble. Good times will come, bad times will come. Stick to your plan. Keep delivering, and remember, like I said, who your bosses are.
Who your bosses are. Absolutely. Great point, Vivek. Manish?
I think I was about to echo the same sentiment in different manner. There is no permanent penthouse or basement, right? So just be cognizant that you are in a lift and you are sometimes going up, sometimes coming down. As long as you're true to your business, true to your KPIs, and communicating well and transparent, life is fine. Be open, and if you're not open, you want to be closed, you want to kind of really not really wanting to be questioned, then do not do IPO. I would clearly say, do not do IPO. Then you are not the right mindset of people to do that. You can't say that I will not answer this question, or I will do this.
Sure.
Or now my CEO will answer, I was the face of IPO, but now XYZ will answer. That doesn't work, right? So yeah, I think be very, very clear that this is a IPO is a responsibility, as many of us have said, and this is a ruthless market where Ramki might be more considerate to you as private equity, right? Because he has really that commitment to make, and he has his MPs who might be more supportive of him. But here you are kind of really dealing with the most ruthless set of people who will not even blink an eyelid and say, okay, I'm moving on. Cut my losses. It's truly, you understand, cut my losses. What does it really mean?
Sure. So be open and be ready to always answer questions and not shirk away from questions. Siddharth, final words from you?
I'll keep it brief. I see the markets being vibrant and maturing more. I think there's an inflection point. We'll see a lot more maturity in investors and research coverage, so depth. I think, and I would just echo the thoughts that the other panelists said. You need to start behaving like a public company before you go public, and I think that would make you realize whether this is something that you should do at that point in time, or should you take longer.
Sure. Behaving like a private company before you go public. So great. Thank you, everybody. I think your time. I think for the audience, I know there is a Q&A, but we will be obviously circulating this session with you. You can still ask the questions. We're happy to answer that. And I'll now pass it on to our CEO, Vishesh Chadiok. And Vishesh, over to you for your concluding remarks.
Thank you, Raja. You've done such a terrific job of moderating this session and keeping it to time. I have only about 4 minutes, and I'd like to ensure we keep it to time. So first of all, a huge thank you to all of you for taking time on a Friday afternoon, evening. I know I'm between yourself and probably a nice weekend plan. Of course, a huge thank you also to the panelists for pretty much giving you the roadmap, not just at a high level of what you have to think about, but also the pre-IPO, during the IPO process, as well as post-IPO thinking, right? So 12, 18 months before, what your thinking needs to be in the run-up, what people said, pre-kickoff call, post-kickoff call, and once you have listed, what your thinking needs to be. I really have to thank the panelists, so many friends, clients who made time for us, and to actually not care about just where their share price goes. I know truly why they're doing that is to share with you and to share with you their experiences and to fulfill their responsibility to the wider capital markets, because eventually the overall capital market success is what will drive their success also. They are a constituent of that. And I think just 2 comments from me, I'd say, when I look at all the comments made by the panelists. One, choosing an IPO as a capital raising event is different to choosing debt. You can pay back debt. Is different to private equity. You can replace one private equity with another. Promoters, shareholders can buy private equity. I consider IPO to be that strategic event that our panelists called, because it's almost an irreversible event. India doesn't have the culture of those public to private transactions yet, at least, and I'm not sure if that's coming anytime soon. So consider it an irreplaceable event. The only time you will get off that thereafter is probably if things aren't going very well. And therefore, it is a very different event from a capital raising perspective. That is why it is that, a strategic event, not just another capital raising event. Second thing I'd say, which is what all the panelists said, it is an opportunity to create value, whether you're going to use that value as currency, like Manish and Azada have done so beautifully, to make acquisitions and grow. But you have to sit back and ask the question, are you ready to fundamentally change the DNA of the company, the culture of the company, what it was before you made the decision to go into IPO and what it will be after will fundamentally be 2 different things, because your responsibility changes, who your boss is, as Vikram Singh said, changes. And you've got to fundamentally ask yourself that question. And I think Yash laid that out so beautifully, that you need to make those changes before and in advance. And I think Siddharth also said the same thing, that eventually don't worry about listing price. What happens in the first day, week makes headlines, but eventually it's the fundamentals of the business that count. That's what will determine success. And that's why you are going down that path of this strategic event called an initial public offering.
No, thank you, Vishesh, very much. And I think sincerely thank you to Siddharth, Ramki, Vivek, Manish, and Yash. I think the last words I would just say that individuals said that when in doubt, disclose. That was Mr. Narayan Murthy. And I guess with that iconic of who's your boss and transparency, I think have a good evening. And we will continue this webinar series on the house and have a great weekend ahead. Thank you very much.